about it is because the health industry lobby is so committed to the status quo in the states that it's very hard to get these bills moved through the legislature. In fact, as I mentioned, 19 states this session introduced this kind of legislation, and only Wyoming passed it, and that's because the House Speaker, who is Senator Simpson's son, was the one to carry the bill. In my opinion, there are no cons, only pros. It is a great way to open up the markets for folks that can't buy all of the benefit mandates that a state puts on health insurance coverage. The Council for Affordable Health Insurance has a great study that they come out with every year on this, and you would be amazed at the number of mandates that states put on health insurance plans, like athletic trainers, marriage counseling, Wilms tumor. I mean, these are things that obviously would be very important for some folks to get, but the more mandates you add to health insurance coverage, the more expensive it becomes, the more you price people out of the market. On the flip side, you can also open up across state lines coverage to allow people to top up for better coverage. So if you were a family with an autistic child and you can't buy a policy in your state to cover autism, maybe you'll want to go to Pennsylvania, who offers coverage with autism care. So there really is a huge potential to insure many, many more people through private coverage without spending a single dollar, which is something that state legislators are very worried about.
And just to Christy's point, some of the differences in states are remarkable. In New Jersey, you will pay roughly 2 to 3 times for a health insurance policy what you'd pay across the state line in Pennsylvania. We used to actually post something on our website, and we took the numbers off New Jersey State website asking the question, which is cheaper in New Jersey, buying a $500 family deductible policy or leasing a Ferrari? And we posted the prices, and the Ferrari was cheaper than buying a $500 deductible health insurance policy, family health insurance policy. So the idea is for those, especially for those states that have really destroyed their health insurance market, to allow people within those states to have access to other markets where the premiums are much lower and you still get the same coverage.
I think Mr. Senator Coleman.
My name is Norm Coleman. I'm the CEO of American Action Forum. I actually support the concept, but I think in fairness, 2 perspectives you need to understand. First is political, which is when you have all these mandates, by the way, Minnesota has 60-something mandates, but we dealt with this in the Congress. It's very hard to make any change because every group comes in and says you're going to take away the right to, you're going to take away coverage for cancer, you're going to take away coverage for some children's conditions. So politically it's hard. But substantively, one of the issues that does come up, one of the comebacks is in Minnesota we have a certain quality of care, certain cost of care. Much different cost of care in Minnesota than perhaps in Florida or some other places. Right. And the concern is that I'm a Minnesota resident, I have costs of care in Minnesota, that if I have a policy in another state, it's not going to cover my ability to get the kind of care that I require. So there is some debate. I support the concept, but certainly the cost of care, quality of care issue is something that folks raise.
Yeah, I agree with Senator Coleman. I in my state, we heard this bill actually last year, and the Division of Insurance, this is where you kind of have to get down to the brass tacks, because it is about your quality of care. Or if you bought something in Kansas and then you try to use it in Colorado, some of those issues are you thought your quality of care was going to be a certain thing, and our Division of Insurance, or the insurance commissioners, I think you have to come. Where it really has to be worked out is you can do compacts between states, but you have to really work out between your Division of Insurance and your insurance commissioners how that's going to look and how that's going to take shape in terms of what you purchase, your value for that, and who actually is provides your care. And it can be worked out. You're right, because listen, this can be done. We have a lot of lobbies that just want to shut that conversation down right at the base of it, and it was shut down last year in my state. Hopefully it'll be revived again in my state, but I think a well done exchange actually can also incorporate that discussion, and I hope today to hear more about that, because I think there could potentially be and maybe my colleagues here agree or disagree, but perhaps there is a way within this kind of discussion of exchange to also talk about this interstate compact and how you might be able to do this.
Well, just a couple of points. If you really believe a market should take hold back into healthcare, then this idea facilitates that. My first session in the legislature in 2009, we had an autism, mandatory autism coverage, and all that mandate come to the legislature. There were 300 autism moms with their kids in the gallery. And the amount of pressure that comes to bear on a legislature is huge. I stood up and spoke against that, much to the consternation of people in my own district. But what you're talking about is a significant cost shift from certain groups of people. That's what an insurance mandate is. It is bearing costs across a large group of people. Healthcare has to transition, like every other market does, to a sustainable growth. I was meeting with a representatives from a big pharmaceutical company, and I talked to him about what we're trying to do in Utah on reform around Medicaid. And he looked at me and he said, Senator, healthcare is a growth industry. It always grows at 3 times the rate of our economy. And I looked at him and I said, listen to what you're saying. To what point? At what point do we say it's mature? Insurance. You know, when I went to law school, I bought a $4,200 Gateway computer. How many of you guys remember Gateway? $4,200. I think it had like 256 megabytes of RAM. It was top of the line, 3 gig hard drive. It was awesome. And I later worked with Bain Consulting out of law school. I worked at Bain Dallas, where we actually helped Dell come up with their strategy. And who won? Ultimately, the providers that realize a market is maturing and focus on high quality, lower cost care will win. And in many ways, our insurance market has shielded healthcare from the natural maturation of a market because of some of these things. If you can open that up to where people can come to Utah and buy a policy in a state with fewer mandates, then you can open up a market to competition. And that, I think, is important to do to bring this market to maturity and allow people to say, we talked about the shift onto Medicaid. I work with a business, we employ 1,500 people. We have a hard time every year absorbing double-digit growth in our healthcare costs. And it's driven by things like, in our effort to be all things to all people and to provide everything that somebody could possibly need on healthcare, it's priced us all out of the market. Government needs to get out of the way. And we need to open up competition across state lines. That's something that works to allow people to say, I want to go to a place where I can buy a policy that doesn't require all this other stuff. And that, hopefully, will break up what really is a government-controlled market, and it's not working.
Another question. Anything else? Well, I will mention this in closing. Oh, yes, sir, go ahead. He's got to go around the pole to get to the microphone.
My name's William Worley. Just a practical question to the 3 panelists. The point about mandates and reform to buy across state lines. To do anything significant in reform, you're going to have Republicans and Democrats cooperate. Could you comment on how likely this is in your state or in states that you know about? Because one side won't be able to do it, I don't think. And the same thing goes for on the national level.
I think one state to watch would be the state of Oklahoma, who they passed this law this year, but Governor Henry vetoed it. So with Mary Fallin coming into the governor's seat, I think we'll see a repeat of that legislation working its way through the legislature. I think the main thing to remember is that the purpose of health insurance regulation is to protect consumers. It's not to protect health insurance companies, the status quo. And I think that when you talk about consumer protection, it's something that the left talks about a lot, and I think it should be talked about. The ultimate consumer protection is allowing people to buy the health insurance that best meets their needs, and this purchasing across coverage across state lines will do that.
And just in terms of the federal level, Congressman Chaddick introduced the legislation several times.